All right, welcome to this deep dive.
Yeah.
And you specifically asked to unpack ACC Limited's Q2 2024 financials. So I'm going to do that for you today.
Yeah.
We've got two key sources, their official press release straight from the October 24th board meeting
Uh,
and an auditor's report to get that really extra detailed view.
yeah, think of it this way. We're going beyond just the headlines
Okay.
to really see what this means for ACC's strategy and how they're handling, the market right now.
I love that. Okay, so the press release starts strong,
Mm-hmm.
highlighting that revenue from operations hit 9,768.41 crore in the first half of 2024.
Yeah.
That's a jump up from 9,635.84 crore the same time last year. So that's an impressive growth.
It is.
What's fueling that success?
It really points to a positive momentum.
Yeah.
The release doesn't get into every single detail.
Sure.
But remember, the construction industry in India is rebounding.
Right.
So more infrastructure projects usually mean higher demand for cement. Right.
Yeah.
Plus, ACC's been expanding their production capacity over the past few years. Both of those likely play a role in this revenue boost we're seeing.
So it's not just riding the industry wave, they're actively positioning themselves
Actively.
to grow. Okay, that makes sense. But then we hit the profit before tax section.
Yeah.
And things get a little more complicated. Q2 2024 shows euro 768.0 crore,
Okay.
which is a pretty noticeable drop from the 144.95 crore that they had in Q2 2023. So help me out here. What should we make of this dip?
Right. A profit decrease always needs a closer look. It's not necessarily a disaster,
Okay.
but we really have to understand the reasons behind it. And if we dig into both the press release and the auditor's report, a few factors sort of pop out. First, there's this exceptional item for 35 crore, which we'll get to in a bit.
Okay.
But even beyond that, we see signs of increased operating costs.
Okay. Increased costs. What are we talking about specifically?
Well, remember that construction industry upswing we were just discussing?
Yeah.
Well, that often means things like raw materials and energy become more expensive, right?
Yeah.
Potentially pushing up ACC's production costs.
Okay.
Plus, the auditor's report mentions a reclassification of mineral royalties. It's now under cost of material consumed instead of other expenses. So while this accounting shift
Right.
doesn't actually change the overall profit, it does give us a clearer picture of where some of those costs are coming from.
Got it. So it's more nuanced than just like good news, bad news on the profit front. There's a whole story behind those numbers.
Exactly.
Okay, now about that exceptional item for 35 crore.
Yeah.
It's linked to a settled legal dispute with JMS Mining that definitely piqued my curiosity. What's the backstory there?
Yeah, this one actually goes back a decade.
Wow.
ACC's subsidiary, ACC Mineral Resources Limited,
Okay.
had teamed up with JMS Mining to develop and run a coal block.
Uh-huh.
However, India's Supreme Court canceled the block's allocation back in 2014,
Yeah.
leading to a contract dispute and arbitration. So fast forward to today,
Okay.
they finally reached a settlement for 35 crore, putting an end to that long legal battle.
Wow, a decade-long saga. Yeah. So it's settled, but how big of a deal is this settlement for ACC financially?
I mean, it's significant because it removes a lingering uncertainty, right? Legal disputes can drain a company's time, money, and resources, so this settlement lets ACC move on without that hanging over their heads.
Like closing a chapter and focusing on what's ahead. Okay, now shifting gears a bit. Something else stood out to me in both these documents. Those penalties from the Competition Commission of India, or CCI.
Ah, yes, those definitely deserve attention.
Okay.
The auditor's report lays out the two separate penalties.
Yeah.
One for a whopping over 1,147.59 crore and another for 35.32 crore.
Wow.
That's a potential financial burden we need to understand.
Exactly. The first one is about allegations of price fixing with other cement companies.
Yeah.
And the second stems from a case in Haryana if ACC loses their appeals. That's a massive hit.
It is.
How worried should we be?
It's certainly a concern, but here's the interesting part. ACC is actively fighting both penalties. They're appealing all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Wow.
They firmly believe their arguments are strong, and they haven't factored these penalties into their financial statements yet.
So it's a wait-and-see situation for now. Those potential penalties are looming,
Right.
but not impacting their balance sheet just yet, but still seeing numbers that big has to make you at least a little uneasy, right?
I understand that, however, it's crucial to remember this is an ongoing legal process, and ACC is confident in their position.
Okay.
We'll have to see how those appeals unfold.
Keeping an eye on those developments for sure. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
Something that really grabbed my attention. That short seller report from back in 2022-23 targeting ACC's parent company, the Adani Group.
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing sparked investigations by the Supreme Court and SEBI, India's securities regulator. It was a pretty big deal.
Definitely caused a stir.
Yeah.
The report made some serious allegations, but things have progressed since then.
Fill us in. Where do things stand now?
Yeah.
What does it all mean for ACC?
Well, the Supreme Court appointed an expert committee to investigate. They found no regulatory failings on Adani Group's part and ultimately dismissed all the appeals related to that report. SEBI also conducted their own investigations, wrapping up most of them, and importantly, finding no major impact on the Adani Group.
So after all that, what about ACC specifically? Did they come out of this unscathed?
Here's the key takeaway. Based on those investigations, legal opinions, and their own internal reviews, ACC's management has stated there were no material consequences for them from those allegations. This is a crucial point from the latest financial report. They're standing by their financials and believe they've successfully weathered that storm.
That's a relief. So a dramatic story. But in the end, according to ACC, no lasting damage.
Right.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here already. We've seen how ACC's revenue is growing.
Yeah.
But their profit is facing some challenges. We untangled a settled legal dispute, explored those potentially massive CCI penalties, and even revisited that short seller saga. It's been quite a journey so far.
It has, and I think it highlights that financial reports are rarely simple. There's always context and further details to consider.
Couldn't agree more. All right, so we've laid out the groundwork, strong revenue growth, a dip in profit with some explanations, and a legal landscape. That's
right.
Well, let's just say it's keeping things interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Where should we focus our attention as we look ahead to what might be next for ACC?
Let's start with those CCI penalties.
Okay.
As we discussed, they represent a substantial financial overhang. That 1,147.59 crore penalty relates to allegations of cartelization.
Right.
Basically, the claim that they colluded with other cement makers to fix prices. And then there's the separate 35.32 crore penalty from the case in Haryana if ACC loses their appeals. It's a major blow.
Talk about high stakes, but you mentioned that ACC is really pushing back against these penalties, right?
Absolutely. They're vigorously defending their position, taking their appeals all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Wow.
They're confident in their legal strategy and maintain that they haven't done anything wrong. It's a bit like a high-stakes poker game.
Okay.
They're all in on this hand.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So legal developments are definitely something to watch.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture? What role does the overall economy play in ACC's future?
That's a crucial point. The construction industry's recovery is a key driver for ACC, but it's not a guaranteed smooth ride. Think about inflation, for example. Rising input costs could really squeeze their profit margins even if revenue keeps growing.
Right.
And then there are interest rates that have been climbing globally, and that could impact infrastructure spending, which would have ripple effects on cement demand.
So it's not as simple as just riding the wave of a recovering industry.
Right.
There are all these other forces at play that ACC needs to navigate.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the competitive landscape. The cement industry in India is incredibly fierce.
Right.
With several major players all vying for a bigger slice of the pie.
Okay.
ACC needs to constantly innovate, become more efficient, and keep finding ways to stand out from the crowd.
It sounds like ACC's management team has their work cut out for them.
They do.
Balancing these legal challenges with economic uncertainties and intense competition. So how are they approaching all of this? Do they have a plan to tackle these potential...
ACC has a multi-pronged strategy that addresses these challenges head-on.
Okay.
For starters, they're making substantial investments in capacity expansion.
Okay.
They're adding new production lines, upgrading their existing facilities, and expanding their distribution network to keep up with the anticipated rise in demand.
So they're getting ready for the future, but what about sustainability? That's a big topic these days.
Yeah.
And cement production isn't exactly known for being environmentally friendly.
You're right, and ACC recognizes that they're making sustainability a core part of their strategy.
Okay.
They're working on reducing their carbon footprint and adopting more eco-friendly practices. It's not just good for the planet. It's becoming a smart business move.
How so?
Well, consumers are increasingly looking for sustainable products, and investors are factoring environmental performance into their decisions. ACC is making a proactive effort to position itself as a leader in this area, which could give them a competitive edge.
So capacity expansion and a focus on sustainability are two major pillars of their strategy. What else is on their agenda?
Product innovation is another key area.
Okay.
They're developing new types of cement with enhanced properties like higher strength, faster setting times, and increased durability.
Uh-huh.
They're even exploring new applications for cement beyond traditional construction, like using it in 3D printing and precast concrete technology.
Sounds like they're thinking outside the box, not just making more cement, but making it better and finding new ways to use it. It's like they're future-proofing themselves.
That's a great way to put it. They're not just reacting to changes, they're anticipating them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The demand for cement might evolve, the competition might shift, and environmental regulations could become even stricter. ACC is trying to stay ahead of the curve.
It's like they're playing a game of multidimensional chess, thinking several moves ahead.
Exactly, and that's what it takes to succeed in today's dynamic and rapidly evolving business world. Complacency is not an option.
We've certainly seen that we've explored the potential pitfalls, the macroeconomic headwinds, and the competitive pressures that ACC faces.
Yeah.
But we've also seen how they're actively tackling these challenges through capacity expansion, their commitment to sustainability and product innovation. It's a pretty fascinating case study, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It really highlights the importance of looking beyond just the financial performance and understanding the strategic thinking, the long-term vision, and the proactive steps they're taking to shape their future.
So we've dissected those legal battles, analyzed the macroeconomic factors, and even delved into ACC's strategic playbook. What's next on our deep dive agenda? What should we focus on as we wrap up this episode?
Now that we have a good grasp of the challenges and ACC's strategic response, let's shift our focus to what you, our listener, should be watching for in the coming quarters.
Okay.
Remember, these financial reports are just a snapshot in time.
Right.
We need to develop a sense of the moving picture.
Okay, so what are the key indicators, the developments our listeners should keep an eye on to gauge ACC's progress and get a sense of their trajectory?
Well, first and foremost, any updates on those CCI cases are critical, as we've discussed those penalties. If upheld, would be a major setback.
Mm-hmm.
Watch for news of hearings, rulings, or any settlements that might emerge.
Legal news is definitely at the top of the list. What else?
Keep a close watch on ACC's profit margins.
Okay.
We talked about the potential for rising input costs, so how effectively they manage those costs and maintain profitability will be a key indicator of their operational efficiency.
It's not just about revenue growth, it's about profitable growth.
Okay.
Got it. What else should our listener be tracking?
Their progress on those capacity expansion plans is crucial. Any delays or cost overruns could impact their ability to meet that rising demand we talked about.
Execution is key.
Yeah.
A great plan is only as good as its implementation.
Exactly. And finally, pay attention to any announcements or developments related to their sustainability initiatives. This is an area where ACC is aiming to differentiate itself. So any concrete progress or setbacks in reducing their environmental impact will be noteworthy.
Okay, so we've got legal developments, profit margins, capacity, expansion progress, and sustainability updates. Those are the big things for our listener to keep an eye on. Is there anything else we should highlight before we wrap up this deep dive? I think that gives our listener a really solid roadmap, for tracking ACC's journey in the coming months. Legal battles, profit margins, those ambitious expansion plans, and their push towards sustainability.
It is.
There's a lot to watch. Anything else we should add to their watch list?
Those are the major points, but I'd also encourage our listener to keep an eye on any news or analysis related to the broader Indian economy. Remember, things like infrastructure spending, inflation, and interest rate changes can have a big impact on a company like ACC.
That's a great point. It's all connected, isn't it?
It is.
We can't just look at ACC in isolation.
Yeah.
The bigger economic picture matters too.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the key takeaways from this deep dive.
Yeah.
Understanding a company's financial performance requires looking at the whole picture. The industry trends, the legal landscape, the macroeconomic environment, and even the company's long-term strategy.
Absolutely. Financial reports are just one piece of the puzzle.
We've really gone beyond just reading those numbers, haven't we?
We have.
We've explored the context, the potential risks and opportunities,
Yeah.
and even gotten a glimpse into ACC's strategic thinking.
It's been a really comprehensive deep dive for sure.
It has.
We've covered revenue growth, profit dips, legal challenges, and even that dramatic short seller saga.
Right.
And I think we've equipped our listener with the knowledge and insights. They need to stay informed about ACC's journey moving forward. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Right.
But as always, the story doesn't end here.
Right.
The financial world is constantly evolving.
Yes.
And new information is always emerging.
Absolutely.
That's why it's so important to stay curious, keep learning,
Yeah.
And never stop asking those critical questions.
Well said.
That's what the deep dive is all about, helping you make sense of complex information so you can make informed decisions.
Exactly.
Whether you're an investor, an industry insider, or just somebody who wants to understand the world around them a little bit better.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, and we're here to empower our listeners.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ACC Limited. We hope you found it insightful and engaging.
Yes.
And remember, keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.